Hi, welcome to Your Federal Connection. I'm Precious George Robinson, NARFE's Communications Assistant, and I'm here with Jessica Klement, NARFE Staff Vice President of Policy and Programs, and John Hatton, NARFE's Director of Legislative and Political Affairs.
Hey, Precious.
Hey, how's it
Hey,
Thanks for having us on the
thanks you guys
inaugural
for
Federal
being
Connection.
here.
Yeah.
Um, This year, Trump released his budget proposal for the next fiscal year, what some will say is an unofficial start of the annual federal spending process. Jesse, we'll start with you. What is the purpose of the president's budget?
The president's budget, which is supposed to be out the first Monday in February every year. This year it was a week later. Last year it was delayed because of the shutdown. So it's not, always the first Monday, but that's really the goal. Sets the administration's policy priorities as well as how to fund those priorities. This program at this agency should have this much money, or we don't want to spend money on this anymore, so we're going to change it, and here are the cuts associated with it. It's a very, numbers heavy document, but also I think the importance is really the underlying policy that matches those numbers.
Yeah, I think that's right. And, it also gives a sense of how much did the government spend the last year, how much are they bringing in terms of receipts, in terms of getting a balance of revenue and spending.
Okay. And do federal agencies have to adhere to the proposals in the president's budget? And also, does Congress really take the president's budget seriously?
Seriously, it's a really good question. It's also the easier of the two, so I'm just going to go with no. Very rarely does Congress take the president's budget seriously, and this is any administration, any budget, right? Because Congress has the power of the purse, and this is what they do. They have the power to spend the money. Federal agencies play a keen role in the budget process. They work with the Office of Management and Budget to put these numbers together to meet the president's policy priorities. So they are heavily involved in the budget process, but really where this goes from here is up to Congress. So there is no onus on the agencies to adhere to anything in the budget.
Okay. And John, we've seen in past Democratic and Republican administrations that federal pay and retirees pay, that it's always on the chopping block. Why is that?
I think the simple answer is that's where the money is. You're looking to balance the budget. We have a big discrepancy between revenues and our spending, and so you need to find places where there is a lot of spending. And when you add up 2.6 million retirees, retirement benefits has spending, and so particularly for this administration's budget, they're looking to have a full balanced budget in 10 years, and to do that you need to cut a lot of spending in a lot of different places, and one of those places is federal retirement programs. So it has cuts to a whole host of different federal retirement benefits through elimination of COLAs for FERS retirees, reduction of COLAs for CSRS retirees by 0.5% each year, reducing the rate of return on the G fund, eliminating the FERS annuity supplement for new retirees, high 3 to high 5 for new retirees.
Increase in retirement contributions for current FERS employees.
Yeah, and we've seen some of these proposals in the past, for example, under the Obama administration, where they did have an increase in retirement contributions, but it's the difference is the degree to which they're there. Obama had proposed a 1.2% increase in retirement contributions, where this one is equalizing it for the cost, so it's
It could be closer to an 8% increase in retirement contributions with no added additional benefit.
Yeah. And so,
which is really just a reduction in take-home pay.
So this is a way, even though these proposals, like Jesse said, Congress isn't going to take them seriously necessarily, luckily and hopefully.
Because of NARFE, because we're working really hard to make sure that they
those
don't.
top numbers to balance for the administration, so they can say, look, here's our balanced budget. So that's what happens. And then on pay, pretty much every budget includes some estimate of what they're going to do for pay raise, because it affects the agency spending levels. And so the first time we hear about what the administration wants to do on pay is in the budget, and then they come forth with an alternative pay plan that they submit to Congress. Usually that's in August. This year it was earlier. So we know the administration is proposing a 1% pay increase. That's lower than the 3% that's the average private sector increase. So.
Wow. And what areas of the budget affects federal retirees and federal employees the most?
So I think you pretty well covered those in
Yeah.
the previous answer. There's this whole host of cuts. The same ones have been in President Trump's budget. This is now his fourth, so this is the fourth iteration we've seen of these cuts, either reducing or eliminating cost of living adjustment for current and future retirees. We're not just talking future retirees, we're talking current. Calculating annuities based on the highest 5 years of salary instead of the highest 3, changing the rate of return on the G fund. There was some mention of FEHB premiums and how those, how the government contribution is calculated, but it was very, very short on details. The increase in retirement contributions for FERS, and then the elimination of the annuity supplement.
Wow.
But again,
Yeah.
like John said, some of these we've seen for years. Some of these we've seen for decades. I'm sure a lot of people listening and watching will say, yeah, we've been talking about high five forever, right? Mm-hmm. So we've been really successful in keeping these threats at bay so far.
And Jesse, this will be the last question. Now that the budget is released, what happens next?
Well, in a normal year, the president would release his budget. Both chambers of Congress would hold hearings and markups and debate the budget and find spending levels. But in July, Congress passed a 2-year budget deal that set funding levels for FY 20 and 21. So you could argue that that congressional budget process isn't really necessary this year because we already know what the top line budget numbers are. I do know that the House is holding at least some hearings. Action in the Senate is really uncertain at this point in time. So I think what we're going to see is the appropriators will start getting to work now that we already know what those top line budget numbers are.
Yeah, typically Congress might have a budget resolution, but because there's this budget deal pre-existing, they might just do something called a deeming resolution that allows the appropriations committees to get to work. And so I think there's sometimes some confusion over the term budget, because you got the president's budget, you got congressional budget resolution, and then federal employees sometimes see the budget they get from Congress, which is what we call appropriations. So a lot of different terminology to mean slightly different things, but all part of the same process.
But and just because like they may not go through the formal process because we have these budget numbers, I don't think that means that NARFE members should sit back and not take action, right? Now that all these proposals have a dollar value associated with them, like the increase in FERS contribution saves like $88 billion, you know, they can always be taken for other things. So even if the budget process this isn't a normal year, these things don't normally come up in the appropriations process. If there is a big, say, infrastructure package, you know, they'll need a way to pay for it. So it's not so much that the cuts are in the budget, but that dollar value is there. So NARFE members should continue to remain vigilant. We'll obviously flag if these come up.
Okay. Well, thank you, Jesse
Thank you.
and John,
Thank you,
for
Precious.
coming out to Your Federal Connection. And thank you all for watching. Stay
Thank you.
tuned.